Albertson and Davidson. And Keith, we're going to talk about probate attorneys and how they're paid in a probate administration. There's these pesky little things called statutory fees, and then there's these things called extraordinary fees. Can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So in probate, the statutory fees are set by a percentage of the estate value, and that's set by statute. And so the amount that you're going to pay for the attorney, for the executor, is 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 100,000, and then 2% of the next 800,000. So
and where do you find these percentages?
They're actually in the probate code section. So there's a probate code section that lists all of these percentages. And it gets a little confusing when you say them out like the way I just did. But the bottom line is that for $1 million probate estate, the statutory fee is going to be $23,000 for the attorney. And the executor makes the same amount, $23,000.
And why do we call these statutory fees versus other types of fees?
Because they're just the baseline fees that executors and the attorney for the executor get paid for the administration. So rather than trying to keep track of hours and how much they do, a standard probate administration, we're just going to pay them that fee based on a percentage, as opposed to what we call extraordinary fees, which is fees for other things.
So the statutory fees, the reason they're called that is because they come from the statute, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then we have extraordinary fees, which you identified. Tell us about those.
That's for additional services. So if you have litigation, tax returns, estate tax returns, sales of real estate, anything that goes outside the bounds of just a normal probate administration, those are going to be subject to what we call extraordinary fees, which are just fees that are awarded by the court at the discretion of the court. It's usually based on an hourly rate of some amount and the amount of hours that the attorney spends doing that project. But the court has the right to review the hourly rate and the services the attorney provided and award more or less depending on what the court deems as reasonable.
Would if there was litigation in a probate estate, would that qualify for extraordinary fees?
It would, yeah. So anytime there's any type of litigation, either over an estate assets, or if the executor has to go out and sue somebody else because somebody else has money that is owed to the estate, that's all extraordinary fees.
And so statutory fees on $1 million estate, you said those are roughly $23,000, plus you got to pay that twice, once to the lawyer, once to the executor. If this was a hotly litigated $1 million probate estate, what's going to be larger, the statutory fees or the extraordinary fees?
Definitely the extraordinary fees, because the amount of money and time that it takes to litigate, it can be substantial. And so you might have $23,000 in statutory fees on an estate like that, but because of litigation, you could have hundreds of thousands of dollars in extraordinary fees, but all subject to the discretion of the court to award that.
All right. Well, it looks like we've looked at statutory fees, extraordinary fees. If you have any questions on those, feel free to reach out to us.